My father left his piano at the house when he left. I wasn't allowed to play it when he was there. I wasn't as good as him. So when he left, I was determined to get as good as him. Taught myself how to play music, and I just stuck with it, and I did it all the time. People in the neighborhood heard about me, and then they started to talk about me. It wasn't in a teasing fashion. It was more like, wow, look what he can do.
In 1995, Prince recorded a song called 2020 that stayed locked in his vault for decades. When archivists found it in 2019, they couldn't believe their ears. The lyrics spoke of masks hiding smiles and people staying indoors while the world came to them, eerily describing the pandemic that would hit 25 years later. But that's not the only prophecy hidden in Prince's secret vault. Today, we're diving into the mysterious recordings that might have seen the future. Prince Rogers Nelson was born on June 7, 1958, in Minneapolis, Minnesota. His family was full of music. His dad was a jazz pianist who performed as Prince Rogers, and his mom was a jazz singer. Prince was named after his dad's stage name, which feels like it was meant to be. Music was in his blood. By the time he was 7, he was already writing songs. His first one, called Funk Machine, was written on his dad's piano. Even though he was a musical prodigy, life wasn't always easy. Prince had epilepsy as a kid and experienced seizures, but he said a spiritual moment helped him overcome it. He once shared that an angel told him he wouldn't be sick anymore, and he believed it. Prince wasn't just talented, he was unstoppable. By the time he was a teenager, he could play several instruments. He taught himself guitar, bass, drums, and piano. On top of that, he explored new technology, like synthesizers and drum machines, which helped him create a sound that was completely his own. He spent hours studying music, learning from legends like James Brown and Aretha Franklin. At 14, Prince started his first band, Grand Central, with Andre and his cousin, Charles Smith. At first, they played cover songs, but Prince soon started adding his own music. They played at school dances and local events, slowly building their reputation. Grand Central was where Prince started to experiment and grow as a performer. He learned how to lead, collaborate, and entertain a crowd. Even though the band faced struggles like finding equipment and gigs, Prince never gave up. He pushed the band to be professional, even though they were just kids. The experience taught him everything he needed for his future. By the time he was 18, Prince's talent caught the attention of Warner Brothers Records. Getting signed at such a young age was a huge deal. It all started when Prince worked on a demo with producer Chris Moon. Moon introduced him to Owen Husney, a local businessman who believed in Prince's talent. Husney helped Prince polish the demo, and soon record labels were fighting to sign him. Warner Brothers won and gave Prince a deal that let him have full creative control over his music, something unheard of for a newcomer. Prince's debut album, For You, came out in 1978, when he was just 19. He played every single instrument on the album, 27 in total, and did all the writing, arranging, and producing himself. The recording process was long and expensive, but it showed just how much of a perfectionist Prince was. The album wasn't a huge hit, but it proved Prince was something special. Prince's first big moment came in 1979 with the release of his song, I Wanna Be Your Lover. This song, from his second album, became his first major hit. It showed everyone how talented he was at writing songs that were catchy and fun to listen to. The song reached number 11 on the Billboard Hot 100 in early 1980 and stayed there for 2 weeks. On the R&B chart, it did even better, hitting number 1 for 2 weeks. This success made people pay attention to Prince, especially in the R&B world. It also helped his album do well, reaching number 22 on the Billboard 200 and number 3 on the R&B chart, which was a big step up from his first album. The song's success gave Prince his first TV appearance. He performed it on American Bandstand in January 1980. During the interview, Prince acted shy and mysterious, giving short answers and even lying about his age, saying he was 19 when he was actually 21. This playful attitude became part of his unique unique style. In 1980, Prince surprised everyone with an album called Dirty Mind. It was bold, shocking, and completely different from his earlier music. The album cover alone grabbed attention. Prince wore a studded jacket, black bikini briefs, and thigh-high boots. He recorded the album quickly in his home studio, and the sound was raw and experimental. The songs were full of energy and pushed boundaries, with lyrics about sex and personal freedom. Critics loved the album, calling it one of the best of the year. It also helped Prince stand out as an artist who wasn't afraid to be different. Just a year later, Prince released another album, Controversy. It continued to break rules, but this time it also touched on political topics. The title song asked bold questions about race, sexuality, and religion, showing that Prince wasn't just about music, he had something to say. Despite being daring and unusual, the album was a hit, going platinum and reaching number 3 on the R&B chart. Prince's career reached new heights in 1982 with his 5th album, 1999. This album made him a superstar. It was his first to break into the top 10, and it included some of his most famous songs, like 1999, Little Red Corvette, and Delirious. The song 1999 became an anthem, with its mix of fun party vibes and serious themes about the end of the world. The music video for the song played a big role too, helping Prince break into MTV at a time when it wasn't common for black artists to get airtime. In 1984, Prince changed music and movies forever with Purple Rain. First, the album came out on June 25th, then the movie was released on July 27th. Both were huge hits. Prince became one of the only artists ever to have the #1 album, single, and movie at the same time. This had only been done before by the Beatles and Elvis Presley. The first big single from the album, When Doves Cry, came out on May 16th. By July 7th, it was #1 in the US, staying there for 5 weeks. It was a very different kind of song, with no bass line, but people loved it. It even became the top-selling single of the year. After When Doves Cry dropped off the charts, Let's Go Crazy replaced it at #1 in September, showing how Prince completely ruled the music scene. The Purple Rain movie didn't cost much to make, just $7.2 million, but it earned $68.4 million in the US alone. For a short time, it even beat Ghostbusters at the box office. People loved the movie, and it inspired them. Prince's purple suits, ruffled shirts, and motorcycle became symbols of the 1980s. The album itself was just as big. On August 4th, 1984, it hit #1 on the Billboard 200. It stayed there for an incredible 24 weeks. This wasn't easy because albums like Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA were big hits at the same time. By the end of the year, Purple Rain had sold 10 million copies in the US. It even caused debates about its lyrics. One song, Darling Nikki, was so shocking to some people that it led to warnings about explicit music. The success of Purple Rain wasn't just in America. It was a #1 album in countries like New Zealand and Switzerland. In the UK, it reached #7 and stayed on the charts for 86 weeks. Over time, it sold more than 25 million copies worldwide, making it one of the best-selling albums ever. Prince's win streak didn't stop there. In March 1985, he won an Oscar for Purple Rain. He went on stage in a sparkling purple outfit, looking as unique as ever. He thanked everyone softly and humbly, saying, "This is unbelievable." That moment showed the world that Prince wasn't just a music star. He was a true artist. After Purple Rain, Prince kept making music. He didn't try to repeat the same style. Instead, he surprised everyone. In 1985, he released Around the World in a Day, which had a psychedelic sound. The song Raspberry Beret became a hit, reaching #2 on the charts. The album wasn't as big as Purple Rain, but it still went double platinum. Then, in 1986, Prince released Parade. It included the song Kiss, one of his most famous hits. This album mixed different styles like jazz and pop. It didn't match Purple Rain's success, but it showed Prince's endless creativity. Together, these albums proved that Prince wasn't afraid to take risks and keep growing as an artist. In 1987, Prince reached a new height in his career. On March 30th, he released Sign of the Times, an album that many people now call one of the best ever made. It didn't come from just one idea. It was built from pieces of 3 abandoned projects: Dream Factory, Camille, and Crystal Ball. Prince picked the best songs from these and created something truly special. The album had 16 tracks, each one showing how versatile he was, mixing funk, rock, pop, and soul in a way only Prince could. In 1990, Prince started a new chapter by forming a band called the New Power Generation, NPG. He had been working alone for years since ending his previous band, The Revolution, but now he wanted a fresh start. Prince called the NPG his best band ever and introduced them at a club in Minneapolis in 1991. The group had amazing musicians like Michael Bland on drums and Rosie Gaines on vocals. The band wasn't just there to back him up. Prince saw them as part of a new way of making music and thinking about life. Their first album together, Diamonds and Pearls, came out in 1991 and was a huge success, with hits like Cream and Get Off. This album mixed Prince's usual funky style with hip-hop and other modern sounds, shaping the music of the early 90s. Prince's connection to Batman in 1989 was another surprise. He made the soundtrack for Tim Burton's movie, and it became a massive hit. It sold over 11 million copies and stayed at #1 on the charts for 6 weeks. The story of how it happened is pretty cool. Jack Nicholson, who played the Joker, liked how Prince's songs fit in the movie and pushed for him to join the project. Prince, a lifelong Batman fan, got to work and wrote the soundtrack in just 6 weeks. The lead single, Bat Dance, became a #1 hit and stayed popular for months. In 1985, Prince also started his own record label, Paisley Park Records. This was a big step into the business world and showed how much control he wanted over his career. The first release under the label was Around the World in a Day, which even had a song named Paisley Park. Prince had complete control over the label and signed artists like Sheila E. and George Clinton. But while his own albums under Paisley Park were successful, the label struggled to make other artists popular. A big part of this was because Prince didn't pay much attention to running the label. He left most of the decisions to his team, and sometimes they signed artists without even asking him. In 1993, on his 35th birthday, Prince did something shocking. He changed his name to a symbol that no one could pronounce. It wasn't just for attention. It was his way of fighting back against Warner Brothers, the record label that controlled his music. The symbol was a mix of male and female signs, and people started calling him the artist formerly known as Prince, or just the artist. Warner Brothers even sent out special discs with the symbol's font to help media use it. Prince believed Warner Brothers owned his name and music, and this was his way of breaking free. At first, people thought he was being strange, but later they realized he was making a powerful point about artists having control over their work. A couple of years later, Prince took his protest even further. In 1995, he started writing the word slave on his face. He did this in music videos, on stage, and in public. He wanted the world to see how trapped he felt in his contract. Prince made a lot of music, but Warner Brothers wanted him to slow down and release albums on their schedule, not his. This upset him because the label also owned the master recordings of his music. Prince explained it simply: "If I can't do what I want, I'm a slave. If you don't own your music, someone else owns you." For Prince, this wasn't just about business. As a black artist, calling himself a slave made a bold statement about control and freedom. Some people thought he was being dramatic, but others admired his courage. Between 1994 and 1996, Prince rushed to finish his contract. He released 5 albums in just a few years, each one showing how fed up he was. His first album during this time, Come, had mostly new songs but was called old material to downplay it. He even released the Black Album, which he had once refused to put out. In 1996, he dropped Chaos and Disorder, calling it his final new album for Warner Brothers. The liner notes even said it was made just to fulfill his contract. Another album, The Vault, Old Friends for Sale, had older songs and was barely promoted. During this time, Prince didn't care much about making hits. He just wanted to get out of his deal, even if it hurt his reputation. Finally, in April 1996, Prince got what he wanted. He regained ownership of his master recordings, ending his long battle with Warner Brothers. This was rare in the music industry, and it gave Prince control over all the music he had made since 1978. To celebrate, he released a triple album called Emancipation. It had 36 songs and lasted exactly 3 hours. Prince called it his Freedom album. He even wrote a song about his struggle, saying, "Free to do what I wanna." The album showed off his talent, with different styles of music and even a few cover songs. Though Prince was grieving the loss of his newborn son at the time, he still went on shows like Oprah to promote the album. This moment wasn't just about music, it was a victory for artists everywhere. After leaving Warner Brothers, Prince started his own label, NPG Records, and began releasing music in new ways. In 2001, he created the NPG Music Club, where fans could pay a monthly fee to download his songs directly. This was way ahead of its time, long before streaming became popular. Over 5 years, he shared hundreds of songs, live recordings, and even podcasts called audio shows, where he talked about his life and music. Fans loved this, but in 2006, Prince suddenly shut it down. No one knows exactly why. In 2004, Prince surprised everyone by reconnecting with Warner Brothers for his album Musicology. This album felt like a return to his classic style, and fans loved it. Prince even came up with a smart way to boost album sales. He gave a copy of the album to everyone who bought a ticket to his tour. The tour was a massive hit, with Prince playing all his greatest songs like Purple Rain and Kiss. That same year, he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Prince was introduced by Outkast and Alicia Keys during his induction, with Keys giving a heartfelt speech. In her powerful words, she said, "There are many kings. King Henry VIII, King Solomon, King Tut, King James, King Kong, the 3 kings, but there is only one Prince." Her statement beautifully summed up the singular and legendary status Prince held in the world of music. Prince married May T. Garcia in 1996, and it was a very important time in his life. Their son, Amir Gregory Nelson, was born on October 16, 1996, but he had a rare condition called Pfeiffer syndrome type 2, which caused serious health problems. Sadly, Amir lived for only 6 days and passed away on October 23, 1996. This was a devastating loss for both Prince and May T, and it changed everything for them. Prince had a hard time coping with what happened. Just 4 days after losing their son, he and May T went on the Oprah Winfrey Show. They showed a playroom they had set up for Amir and talked about him as if he were still alive. It was a very strange and emotional moment, showing how deeply Prince was affected. A few weeks later, on November 19, 1996, he filmed a scene for his music video Betcha by Golly Wow, where May T pretended to tell him she was pregnant again. This happened almost a month after Amir's death, and it showed how much Prince was struggling to face reality. The pain didn't stop there. 2 years later, May T had a miscarriage, which added to their grief. These tragedies were too much for their marriage to handle, and they divorced in 2000. Later, May T revealed that Prince decided to get rid of everything in Paisley Park that reminded him of her or their son, including Amir's ashes. After May T, Prince married Manuela Testolini in 2001. They met when she worked for his charity, Love for One Another. Their wedding was private, but their life together was very extravagant. They threw huge parties after award shows like the Oscars and Grammys, spending over $50,000 on just one event. Manuela even had a stylist who cost $5,000 a day. They also shopped at expensive stores like Gucci and Versace without worrying about money. Prince made $42 million in 2004 alone, so they could afford it. But things didn't last. In 2005, Prince locked Manuela out of their home, cut off her credit cards, and moved her things into Paisley Park's vault. This marked the end of their relationship. Manuela filed for divorce in May 2006, and even after it was finalized in 2007, there were still issues. She received $10,000 a month in support, a $6 million house in Toronto, and a Lexus. Prince also gave her $3 million in a special account, but they argued over items like jewelry, photos, and videos of songs he had written for her. Prince spent his last years battling constant pain and a secret struggle with painkillers. For years, his hips and ankles hurt badly because of his intense performances, often in high heels. In 2010, he had hip surgery, but it didn't fully solve the problem. To cope, he started taking strong painkillers like Percocet. No one knew how serious his use of pain medication had become until after he died. When investigators searched his home, Paisley Park, they found pills hidden all over the place. Some were even disguised in regular medicine bottles. Prince's lawyer insisted he lived a clean life, saying Prince wasn't walking around drugged up. But the pills told another story. In his final months, Prince started looking weaker. His chef, Ray Roberts, noticed he was losing weight and barely eating. Roberts said Prince didn't even drink water anymore. This made things worse because the painkillers affected his body even more when he was weak. The saddest part was that Prince was unknowingly taking fake pain pills that had fentanyl in them. Fentanyl is a drug much stronger than heroin, and Prince didn't know how dangerous the pills really were. A scary moment happened just 6 days before Prince died. On April 15, 2016, his private plane had to make an emergency landing in Illinois. Prince had passed out mid-flight, and the plane had to drop from the sky quickly to get him help. When the plane landed, medics gave him Narcan, a medicine to reverse an overdose. This was the first public sign that Prince was struggling with drugs, but his team said it was just the flu. The next day, Prince showed up at a party and told his fans, "Wait a few days before you waste any prayers." That line now feels eerie, almost like he knew something bad was coming. After the emergency landing, things only got worse. Prince was seen going to a pharmacy several times. People said he looked nervous and frail. On April 20th, the day before he died, Prince went to his doctor. The doctor secretly wrote a prescription for him under the name of Prince's bodyguard to keep his privacy safe. At the same time, Prince's team was desperate to help him. They called Dr. Howard Kornfeld, an expert in addiction, for urgent help. Dr. Kornfeld's son, Andrew, flew to Minnesota with medicine to help Prince, but by the time he arrived the next morning, it was too late. Prince was found dead in his elevator. Prince died on April 21, 2016, at 57 years old. The autopsy showed he had a deadly amount of fentanyl in his system. It turned out the pills he was taking were fake and laced with this dangerous drug. The investigation after his death found pills hidden all over his home, but no one could figure out who gave him the fake drugs. Prince's famous vault began taking shape in the early 1980s. Back then, Susan Rogers, his sound engineer, noticed how much music Prince was creating. She realized they needed a way to keep everything safe and organized. In 1983, she started gathering his master tapes from different places, like Warner Brothers and even banks in California. These tapes became the start of what would later be called the Vault. When Prince built Paisley Park in 1987, he included a special room in the basement for this archive. The room was big, about 20 feet by 40 feet, and filled with tall industrial shelves. Prince made sure it was secure, adding a thick vault-style door with a combination lock. Over time, the vault became legendary, but years later, Prince forgot the combination to his own vault. Because of this, he began using a smaller pre-vault to store new recordings. This only added to the mystery surrounding the original vault. After Prince died in 2016, the vault became the center of attention. A week later, the estate's administrators decided to open it. They hired a famous safecracker named Dave McComey to do the job. The vault was massive, 6,000 pounds of solid steel, and built to resist tampering. McComey used a special method called micro-drilling. He drilled a tiny hole to peek inside the lock with a periscope. It took hours of careful work, but finally, on April 28, 2016, the vault was opened. Inside was a treasure trove of music, tapes and recordings packed from floor to ceiling. People estimated there was enough unreleased music to release an album every year for the next 100 years. But opening the vault was just the first step. The real work began when they had to catalog and preserve everything. There was so much material: songs, live recordings, music videos, and some of it was in bad shape. By mid-2017, it was clear that water damage, mold, and time had taken their toll. Boxes were stuck to shelves, film reels were rusting. The team had to act fast to save as much as they could. There were other challenges too. Prince wasn't big on labeling things clearly. Some tapes had strange names like Cold Coffee and Cocaine, and others had no labels at all. The team had to listen to everything to figure out what it was. On top of that, the vault had recordings in old formats that needed special machines to play. In one case, they had to track down a rare piece of equipment from Japan just to access some of the recordings. To protect the archive, the estate decided to move it to a secure storage facility in Los Angeles. This wasn't an easy decision. It involved transporting over 30 tons of material, and Prince's family worried things might get damaged. Still, the move was necessary to ensure everything was preserved properly. Prince's vault has been full of surprises, revealing music that fans never knew existed. One of the biggest finds happened in 2018. Archivists uncovered an album called Welcome to America, recorded in 2010 but never released. It had songs about race, politics, and justice. When it finally came out in 2021, it became a huge moment for Prince fans, showing how thoughtful and ahead of his time he was. Another surprise came in 2019. Tapes labeled The Flesh were found. These recordings, from 1985, had funky experimental music Prince made with his band, The Revolution, and saxophonist Eric Leeds. Nobody even knew this project existed, so hearing it was like finding a hidden piece of Prince's genius. In 2020, something fans had only heard rumors about was finally confirmed. Archivists found a whole album Prince made with Madonna in 1989. It was called Love and Sex, with 11 tracks of them singing together over funky pop beats. Fans had guessed for years that such a project might exist, and now it was real. Then, on Prince's birthday in 2021, another treasure was revealed: the Gold Experience Deluxe Edition. This expanded version of his 1995 album had 28 extra tracks, including alternate versions and live recordings. It was a gift for fans who loved one of his most creative periods. Later that year, another jaw-dropping discovery was made. A series of tapes from 1983 showed that Prince had recorded an entire album with jazz legend Miles Davis. The album, called Miles and Prince, mixed Prince's funky style with Davis's jazz brilliance. Their admiration for each other was already well known, but this album showed how they actually worked together. In 2022, archivists found The Rebels, an album Prince made in 1979 with his early band. It gave fans a look at how young Prince was growing into the legendary musician he would become. He had mentioned this project before, but people thought it was lost forever. These discoveries aren't just exciting. They show how much Prince created that the world never got to see. Each new find adds something special to his legacy, proving his endless creativity and making fans feel like there's always more to discover. One song from the vault has caused a lot of buzz. It's called 2020, and Prince recorded it in 1995. It was meant for his album Emancipation, but it didn't make the final cut. The song stayed hidden until it was found in 2019. When fans heard the lyrics, it felt like Prince had predicted the future. He sang about unity, change, and people staying inside while the world came to them. Lines like "masks on faces, can't see smiles" made people think of the COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdowns of 2020. Whether he predicted it or not, the song showed how much Prince thought about the future and the world around him. After Prince's death in 2016, a lot of his hidden music has been released. Some albums, like Piano and a Microphone 1983, show him in raw, unpolished moments, just playing at his piano. Others, like Originals, let fans hear his versions of songs he wrote for other artists. Welcome to America was one of the biggest posthumous releases, earning a Grammy nomination and showing Prince's timeless messages about society. Releases like these have thrilled fans, but they've also caused controversy. Prince didn't leave a will, so deciding what to release has been messy. His estate has faced lawsuits, disagreements among heirs, and even issues with taxes. Some fans wonder if Prince would have wanted certain music to be released, but others feel grateful to hear his work, even after his passing.